Good morning. We wanted to hold a press conference. I know the governor and the House did yesterday. We decided to wait today. We can answer some of your questions too, but we are still moving forward. I am positive, I am optimistic that we'll get done on time and it'll be a budget that Minnesota can be proud of. We're asking the governor and the House to focus on the basics. There might be some extra things that we get on each side. That's always a good thing, but some of the large progressive ideas that the governor has, or even some of the ideas that we have that only we share, we're not going to, I doubt we'll agree on at the end. But part of it is making sure that we get on the same page, and so we did suggest to the governor and the speaker that we have a meeting today to just talk about the tax bill. We have not done that yet. They said, why don't we just wait till Sunday night? That's not a negative. We are working together. It's just that, that's just not where they were at without an offer. But I did want to clarify a couple things, and that's why we have this first chart here. We all agree that last year's spending was $45.5 billion. We're all on the same page with that number. Where it sort of breaks down or changes is the forecast number means automatic spending is $47.4 billion. So that's the number that they would say is zero. They would say that is zero, and we actually say that that's an increase. So that's where we kind of go back and forth is where were we, where are we? There's also $1 billion of surplus, which we all agree on. That's a number we all agree on again. And so we say our total spend is $40.7 billion, which is, we say, is $2.2 billion of increase above that number. See, and that's where they say, well, it's not a big increase. It's only, barely $300 million. And so that's where we kind of go back and forth of what numbers are we going to use. And so in the end, we say that the spending increase just in the general fund is about 5%. Theirs is 9.4%. And then the governor is 8.4. So I've been roughly saying 8.5 and 5% is where we're at. So that's the first one that we acknowledge with each other now that we're starting from different points, but I wanted you to understand what the differences are. So when the governor made a first offer of $200 million of spending reduction, we just took that as what he said, spending reductions. It wasn't later till he clarified, no, I meant $200 million of revenue decreases. He didn't say where that was going to come from, but that was helpful for us in one of our later meetings to hear that clarification. So we're all kind of trying to get on the same page for language, which is why we countered and offered $25 million more into education. And if he helped us save money in health and human services, we'd put that into education. Neither one of those were big offers from the other person's point of view, but the fact that they came that early is really good. The fact that we're actually making some offers that far in advance was a very, very good step. The fact that the committees are meeting, they have the side-by-sides, which are way apart, but the fact that they have them this early, that's all good. So that was the first part. That's the general fund. I'm not Vanna White here, anybody that's old enough, but but the other thing that we want to bring into the conversation is total tax increases, because for us that's a big issue. We've never voted for a tax increase since 2011. Republicans haven't voted for a tax increase. We did agree to a few fees here and there, but that has always been something that's very, very important to us, is that we are fiscally responsible with the resources that Minnesota gives us. And so we don't look at just the general fund for money. We look at all funds, all places that we're asking Minnesotans to pay taxes or fees. We put that all into one big pot. That's important to us. And so if you look at the Senate budget, which I said is over $2 billion of spending increases, we didn't raise taxes anywhere except a new fee for opioids. We all decided that this was worthy enough that we would all agree and do that. We haven't got that past the finish line yet, but I believe it will. But then you have the House Democrats, $1.3 billion in the general fund. A big part of that is that tax bill that we wanted to talk about. Tax conformity brings in over $800 million if you just conform to the federal government and don't give it back to Minnesotans. So that's where their number is. Same thing with the governor. And then we didn't have the sick tax. The sick tax or provider tax, if you want to call it, whichever you want to call it, that was what we fought so hard for in 2011 to finish, was that the provider tax would go away in 2019. And so for us to say that we're going to take that back now, when that was one of our big victories, that is why we're so passionate about it, is because that was our victory from 2011. Republicans and Democrats, House, Senate, Governor didn't plan for the fact that now we're at 2019 and it's going away. And that's why this is one of the big discussion points. And then we have transportation taxes, and we're zero. But again, we're passionate because 2 years ago, for the first time in over a decade, we actually put new money into roads and bridges. We took half the sales tax on auto parts and put that into roads and bridges, so that this year there's $530 million of new money coming in, $8 billion total, but we finally put new money in 2 years ago. Again, over a decade, we finally did it. Governor Dayton signed it, and so when Governor Walz wants to put that money back into the general fund and then raise a bunch of transportation taxes, we resist, because we actually did something that nobody did in over a decade. And then we said we're willing to do some bonding money. The last 2 years we put $500 million into roads and bridges in bonding, plus that new sales tax on auto parts. So again, we're different there. Paid family leave, that's another program that is what I would call one of his progressive ideas that costs at least $800 million. I've seen numbers of $1 billion, but we're trying to be as accurate as we can here. At least $800 million of new money on employees and employers. And the problem is you got 65 to 70% of employees have some form of paid family leave, paid sick time. They're not going to get much more in benefits, but they're going to pay much more in taxes. And so why would they want to do that when they already have the benefit, and now you're going to get that benefit or maybe a little bit more, but also going to have to pay a significant tax increase to do it. The second reason we're not for that is show me that MNLARS is going to work. And I feel like we might have found a new path for that. Show me that we're going to protect CCAP, the Child Care Assistance Program, so that the people that actually need it are going to get the care. We have a waiting list on that, and we're wasting that money on people that don't deserve it. Show me that that's going to work. Show me that MNsure is working and can get up to speed. I mean, it took forever for that to happen. Before we look at anything else, I want to make sure our present house is in order. And so those are the reasons why we don't support it. Then borrowing proposal, that's the bonding bill. Right now we're at zero. I will say we did $100 million at the beginning of the year, but we're at zero. They're at $1.6 billion and $1.2 billion. Maybe there's a little bit of room there, but I'm just saying that's where we're at right now. OneCare, we have no idea what the cost of that is. That's pushed out into the future, government-run health care, but I am convinced it would be in the billions of dollars. And then the other one is the Minnesota Green New Deal. We have no idea what the cost is, but I'm convinced that the cost increase to people that would pay higher rates for utilities would be in the billions of dollars. And finally, fees. We have $20 million of fees. Theirs is 146 or 115 million. So the total pot of new money, we're at 20 million. There, I say over this first 2 years is 4.7 billion or 4.2. But in the out years, the numbers are much higher, which is why we say 12 billion in 4 years. But I wanted you all to see why we are where we are. We want a budget that works for Minnesota. We didn't do a budget that was $1 billion of cuts. We did a budget that used the money we had and the surplus and put a budget together, which we say is $2.2 billion more. That was a big give for us about where we want to be. And so I wanted you to see that and have the negotiating team here to answer any questions that you might have, accept offers that we might make. So with that, any questions?
Commissioner France told us that your offer was dependent, I think, on $66 million saved, and I think that was through HHS. He's saying that's absolutely not justifiable, he can't figure out how you're getting there. Can you explain to us how you're getting
Do
there?
you want to address that at all? Or otherwise I'll try.
Well, as you know, $1.6 billion in growth in human services, and he's willing to cut nursing homes. So I'd say he should take a look at the rest of his budget and figure out how he can become more efficient. 1,000 new full-time equivalent employees, projected growth. Regardless of what the number is, it's time to take a serious look at the growth. $1.6 billion in growth in human services from last budget to this. And so I think it's worth a significant look. And the department can find money when it wants to find money. It took $14 million that was supposed to go to employees and put it into an IT system. So I think a little more scrutiny and a little less chatter might be a good idea.
But you're not answering the question. Where is that savings that you have identified? Where is that coming from?
The savings that I've identified, we took out growth trend. We took out, we adjusted so that the public programs were the same as the qualified health plans. I mean, we're reforming CCAP instead of setting it on autopilot. So we're willing to take a really aggressive look, but we're going to need a partner in the department because when they want to find money, they find money.
Senator Gazelka, you say you're moving forward, you're positive, you're optimistic, but you're not talking to other leaders at this point.
No, we are talking.
You are talking?
Yeah.
Is it unofficial? Tell us what brings that optimism?
So each day is a little bit of a blur. So I believe it was the day before yesterday, but that we sat, it was the day after talks broke down. We got together the very next day, even though they were heated the Monday night. Tuesday then, we actually had a very productive conversation about how do we set this up to get done on time. And so we reached out to the revisor's office. That's the group that actually puts the bills together at the end, because we wanted to know how much time you actually need. That was a big step as well, because we're trying to put that into the finishing on time. And so that's why I expect with serious negotiations starting Sunday night again, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere right in there, I think we'll get to the place we need to be.
But no talks Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday still?
So that's why we offered to have a conversation today on taxes. I'm not placing judgment on it one way or the other. Well, they just said if there's not an offer, then we'd rather wait till Sunday night. The problem with Friday and Saturday, that's the governor's fishing opener. We're not going to play games with that. We'll go on the boat and maybe get some negotiating done there. And then Sunday, we wanted a little bit of the Mother's Day events that we don't miss that. So that's why we're starting Sunday night. But that doesn't mean we're not talking now or talking to some of the other people other than the governor that will help make decisions.
On Tuesday afternoon, after you finished, everybody came and spoke to the press, and both Speaker Hortman and the governor said they want the Republicans to make the next offer. So when you meet on Sunday, will you come with another offer?
So that's some of the conversations we're having now about how do we make that next step. So we all know we need to get going.
What's your ending fund balance in your current budget? Do you have a reserve at the end of your budget?
You do that?
Ooh, I do not have
If you'd
that.
asked me ahead of time.
Yeah.
We have money in the end.
Now that you're looking over here, I'll ask a second
The
question.
reserve, the ending amount is 85 million and 100, that's the ending amount in our budget is 85 million and 111 in the next biennium.
That's the bottom line.
Bottom line. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I was expecting it to be more than that, but I want to ask you about the tax provisions in the federal tax reform bill having to do with repatriation
Yes.
of income. That seems to me, coming out of Republican Congress, that would not be as partisan as it appears to be in this bill there. Can you explain why that isn't considered, found money that you might want to
Yes.
collect?
So the question is why do we not take the foreign operating income? First of all, at the federal level, they passed the Tax Act, took that money, and in return gave them a lower corporate tax rate. So there was a trade. In Minnesota, some want to take all that money, but not give a lower Minnesota corporate tax rate. So that's one of the differences. The second thing is we're not so sure that wouldn't end up in a lawsuit, that's not money that we could actually take. In the budget last year, we actually, I believe, had something like 50 million of that foreign operating income was in there. This one is 0. We also think now you'd have to claw back a whole year back. It's not from this point forward. It's actually all the way back from when that act happened. So those are some of the reasons why it's not in there.
Senator Rosen, could you talk about, Senator Gazelka said we don't raise taxes except the new fee on opioids, how that's kind of the one fee you were able to get through your caucus?
It was a licensing fee increase, and as you've probably heard with the opioid press conferences and all the work for the last 2 years on that bill, currently manufacturers and distributors pay $235 to do business in Minnesota. And the opioid manufacturers, distributors need to be a part of this solution, and so we are raising this up to basically get $20 million. Half of that goes to child protection, and half of that goes to the advisory council that will fund treatment programs and prevention and education, whatever is needed to get a handle on this epidemic.
And how about the why and the how, because it's not easy getting fees through.
The House?
Getting it through your chamber, the Senate. The how and the why you got the fees and the revenue attached to
Well,
that.
I think it was, we've been working on this for a very long time, and we're a compassionate caucus. We understand that there needs to be some responsibility, and I believe everybody agreed that they all needed to come to the table, and what they're paying right now is ridiculous.
What about the difference between, we've been told the difference is that the Senate bill would allow them to not pay the fee if they reach a settlement with the state, so they're not paying twice. In the House, it seems like they want to keep the fee in place. Is that correct? Or?
Yes, the big push between the Senate and the House is the sunset on when a certain amount is reached. Currently, right now, it's $20 million in the Senate bill, and the House doesn't have anything as far as they want to keep going into perpetuity. And I feel that we should have a sunset. It's an aggressive licensing fee, but it's responsible. And frankly, the industry is looking towards the Senate bill as being one we can support. And that, to me, that means they will be a part of the solution.
Tell them what happens to the fees after the sunset goes away.
Oh, very good point. Thank you, Paul. They go down to $5,000. When they reach, and we haven't quite negotiated the sunset yet, but in the Senate bill, it goes down to $5,000, and it's a revenue of $13 million ongoing to support all the opioid work that we're doing. So it's reasonable, it's fair, it's what other states are looking at, and we're setting the bar for other states too.
Does the legislation include some type of oversight function so you'll get to know that money's really being used the way you expect it to be used?
Yes, we're actually, and the governor has this in his bill too. We have the results first. We're paying handsomely for that. And we have the advisory council also looking at that and reports back to the legislature.
Any chance that could break off and ride alone and get through?
I'm hoping, yeah.
I want to take one other, because there are some fees that we are open to or that we sometimes do over the years, and one of them that's before us right now is the governor agreed with us that we should take a separate independent look at MNLARS, that it's not working and that we're just going to keep pouring money down a rabbit hole. And so he agreed to that. That was a big step. I'm saying maybe he'll be the technology governor. I mean, because he's willing to look at it differently. We did bring in an agreed-upon third party, and lo and behold, they came to the same conclusion. It's not going to work. And so we are together stopping that and going a different route. It'll be a private sector solution, likely somebody that's done it in other states. But as a result of that, there will likely be some sort of resources that are needed. Well, now there's a more of an openness because there's been this working together. We have a private-public partnership that we believe is going to work. And so that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. So opioids would be similar to that. We all saw this problem that we had. We just couldn't figure out how to get to a solution. So this was kind of like the best one of all the ones that we looked at.
And would you let it break off and ride along solo so you could get a victory on that?
Sure.
Okay. Any other things, like an ag bill, anything else? If victories are slow in coming, would you let some things break off and move on?
PBM?
PBM
Yeah. Yeah. And then in the past, too, we've done a number. MNLARS was something that we want to make sure ran separate. The hands-free bill we ran separate. The marital rape bill we ran separate. There's a number of things that we've done that we want to get done, and sometimes it's better to just let them go separate.
And like a budget bill, would ag be a possibility?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
If we're close enough, I'm open to it, I just don't know for sure that we'll do that.
On Tuesday afternoon, after it was announced that there would be no more talks until Sunday, Senator Limmer expressed some concern that the conference committees are going to kind of be shoved into a corner and that there's going to be little time remaining to do their work. Do they have anything to worry about?
We want them to continue to work. The policy areas that they agree on, they should be talking about, should be aware of. There is a lot of disagreement on many of the budget bills between the House and the Senate. Those, no matter how much time we have, I don't know that we'll come together. So new policy, either side, if they don't agree, doesn't happen. And so the budget numbers are the key part, the target numbers, but they still can do a lot of work to find the common ground.
What do you expect to happen in that conference committee regarding the House gun provisions? Is that going to come up at all? Are you going to avoid it completely? What's the plan?
The House is certainly willing to bring up anything they want when they have the gavels. That's their choice. We made it clear that if it didn't have a hearing and an up or down vote in the House, we had no interest in taking any time this year to look at it. And that's where we are, and that's why we said, what we said. And there's a lot of provisions in there. Last year, it was the House GOP that had a judiciary bill that was pretty big, and the Senate did not. I think that's a tradition of the Senate. They were more deliberate. We don't do as many things and as fast as the House. And I don't care whether you're Republicans or Democrats in the House, trying to merge that with the Senate has always been frustrating.
Senator, a lot of the chatter in the hallways is that the end game here is the governor gives up his transportation taxes, you give in on the health care provider tax. Is that a likely scenario?
There you go again. You are good at it. No comment.
We got time for one more, guys, before session.
What happens with the revenue lost when the provider tax sunsets? We've heard Commissioner Lori, and he's probably said the same thing in Chair Benson's committee, that this leaves a giant hole in his department's budget. What is the game plan for dealing with that?
So there certainly is a budget hole 5 years out. There would be a problem there if we didn't fix it. Same thing with Governor Walz's OneCare. It's a little farther out, but there certainly is a hole unless we have a big tax increase. And so those are issues. In 2010, they kicked the big can down the road and left us in a tough spot. I want to find a way to make sure we don't have a tough spot going forward.
Thanks, guys.
Tax fee question,
Last one?
insulin tax fee also.
I don't have
in
an answer on that one.
This, isn't it in?
I can, I'll just.
Insulin?
Last one, she can answer, then we'll answer it all.
The Senate took a position to have a small fee assessed to provide emergency insulin for those people who did not have it available. They're not on a public program. They don't have insurance coverage. So if they're uninsured or don't have prescription coverage, we took a very narrow look at what would have been a $21 million charge to the industry. We believe ours is going to be $2.5 to $3 million. We're continuing to work on that. We want to make sure that the people who need the care are getting the care, but it doesn't need to be as big as it was initially proposed. And so it is in conference committee. I also have clean water fees, kind of core functions of government. So we're not terrified of new revenue. We just think this is a little out of line. Well, maybe a lot out of line.
Price and transparency.
All right, we got to get to the floor.
Thank you.
We actually have to go to session.
Yeah.
They're waiting for us.
They're waiting for us.
Yes.